Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. I am your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. Before we get started, I urge you to share the show. Spread the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast. Tell someone about the show. Make sure you're subscribed so you catch every episode. It really helps us out when you hit that subscription. Give us a good rating and review if you have a minute. Thank you, folks. Today, we have a coffee news episode. We've got our favorite guest, Dr. Coffee, on the line. What's up, Dr. Coffee?
It's another day above ground, living the dream, my friend.
Nice.
Sitting here drinking a nice cup of coffee because it's hot out.
An iced cup of coffee or a nice cup of coffee?
Iced coffee.
Cup of coffee. I see.
I make a slow brew, a cold brew, and I leave it in the fridge, and then I have my iced coffee every day.
Nice, man. Keep cool on a hot day. It's getting hot out there, folks. We're actually going to get into a little bit of that a little later. But first, Dr. Coffee, my understanding is you're working on a little something.
Oh yeah, I was chatting with you this thing, and I thought it'd be interesting enough to talk about at least a little. I've been working with some companies out of India on Ayurvedic, which is the traditional Indian medicine.
Oh.
And it's been a real eye-opening thing to me because it plays so much on coffee. Let me explain what I mean by that. Mm-hmm. There's a number of herbs that have similar functions to that of drugs. So, for example, there's an herb called berberine, which does wonderful work for patients that have blood sugar issues.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, it's one of those herbs on my list that is very similar in its effects to drugs that are out there. But there are some people that do not get good relief from berberine.
Uh-huh.
And I've been working really hard to try and figure out why. And I've come up with the idea, which I've now been able to prove, is that there are plenty of berberines out that are not tested properly and therefore are not standardized.
Oh, so it depends on the source.
Very much it depends on the source. And I'm going to tie this all together in a moment here. So it very much depends on the source, but it also depends on the laboratory procedures. So we're getting berberine that we're able to view in the lab and see whether there's heavy metals, whether there's toxic chemicals, and whether or not there's standardization for its potency. Mm-hmm. And then out of how many milligrams is the potency of what we're looking for in the chemical. Now, why is this of interest to me, Dr. Coffee? Because there are coffees that are like this as well. And so far, I've only been able to determine one or two coffees that are medicinal grade. Meaning that it has the chemicals that you want in a standardized high fashion, and it doesn't have the toxicity that you don't want, and that's been shown by laboratory procedure.
Right.
And so one of the coffees that is a medicinal grade is Purity, which you know something about.
That's right.
And so that's why I always say that Purity is one of the only medicinal grade coffees that I know. And I'm getting even more into it when I'm looking at medicinal grade herbs for Ayurveda.
That is what Purity is actually going to be working on as a little teaser, specific blends for specific health results. So I don't want to give too much away here, but that's a small teaser that is dropped in the middle of this content. Yeah, I don't even know if I should be saying that, folks, but that is very interesting, because when you take a look at the levels of reduction, as you're saying, they often rival medication. I think that obviously, not all herbs are created equal, right? But this berberine is super interesting. You can Google this if you're listening, berberine, berberine. It's a chemical compound. It's found in a lot of different herbs like European barberry, golden seal, gold thread. It's in a bunch of stuff, tree turmeric. But as you said, Dr. Coffee, you nailed it. It's taken for diabetes. It's taken for high cholesterol levels. It's not harmful. There's no serious side effects other than just some digestive stuff like upset stomach. This is really wild. So this one seems like a safe and effective herbal treatment.
It is very much so. And yep, very much so, which is why I'm all about berberine right now, because this country is epidemic in the form of diabetes and sugar handling problems and insulin resistance, and berberine is a phenomenal herb for this. But again, there's lots of berberines out there that are not standardized, that have toxins, that are not showing the milligrams that are necessary for the necessary chemicals.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I'll have more on that later. We can do something on berberine when I've written my brochure on berberine.
When you've written your thesis.
Yeah.
We shall return to this topic. Okay, man, I love that. Let's move into coffee news. Play the laser sound effects, pew pew, to get into the news segment. Everybody, we've got 4 articles here. They are diverse and they are very, very interesting. That's why this episode really forced our hand on this episode. First, Dr. Coffee, we're headed down to Brazil. You mentioned the heat, the summer heat. But if you go down to Brazil, there's been some crazy weather patterns. And this story is a little bit old by now. It dropped earlier this month at the beginning of August, but apparently there was a devastating frost that swept across Brazil. And for those who don't know, frost is extremely damaging to the coffee plant. When coffee plants get frosted over, it's not just like, if you've seen your flower get frosted over and then it recovers the next day. It demolishes these plants. My understanding is it can even stop them from fruiting, and they have to kind of go through the vegetating cycle to be able to bear fruit again after just one frost sometimes. So a frost swept over Brazil. It shot up the price of coffee briefly there, as people were speculating a second one. But then those speculations kind of dropped off and the price kind of recovered to a normal level. But this was a huge deal, Dr. Coffee. It looked like, the coffee futures totaled over 500,000 contracts, and a lot of those were affected. Did you see this frost in Brazil and the effects that it had?
I did, and I know what happened in July with the price of coffee futures, and I know about the problem with sourcing right now with Arabica beans, because it really destroyed a bunch of the Arabica farms. Mm-hmm. I think there's a bigger issue with this, though, that people are not speaking about. If you're still on the fence about whether or not climate change is real, then it's time you took a big swig of coffee and fell off that fence on the right side of it.
The way you phrase stuff, man.
America is burning. Greece is burning. Russia in Siberia is burning so bad that they're not even trying to put it out.
Wow.
The world temperatures are changing and the weather patterns are changing. And what that becomes is that products become scarcer and prices go up. So whatever you're doing right now, if you think pricing is high, I've got to tell you that in a few years from now, they're going to be much higher, because the climate is really making it hard to grow things that are microclimate products.
Yes. 100%.
Like wine
Yep.
and coffee are both microclimate products, and we're going to see very high costs in the next few years.
It's a really tough one, too, because these are luxury products that we've become absolutely attached to and enamored with. So if the food supply starts, if there's a shortage in the food supply or something happens where, let's say pandemic, for instance, where there's a push to grow your own vegetables at home, you can do that. You can go ahead and do that. You cannot grow your own coffee at home. You cannot grow your own wine at home. So no matter how, you know what I'm saying? No matter how localized and agrarian we go back to as a society, this is something that we have to protect. Otherwise, it's going to be gone or virtually gone, unaffordable, right?
Yeah, so I disagree with you when you say these are luxury items. You can live a month without food, a week without water, 3 minutes without oxygen. You can't live at all without coffee. I mean, I'm just saying. So, just so we understand.
I know it's at the base of your food pyramid, Dr. Coffee. That would be a dark day, but yeah, it's hilarious, man. But it would be, wouldn't it be nice if you could just grow your own coffee tree at home? But this is a finicky plant. It grows in a specific environment. It takes years before it fruits. And then, like I said, it's finicky. Once you actually get it fruiting, you have to take care of this plant that is not easy to cultivate. Hopefully there is not a second frost. I think those fears have kind of passed, but who knows, man? Who knows? Like you said, you never know. So it's just another reminder of the extremely fragile supply chain that is coffee.
Yep.
Let's move on to this next one here. I got to run this by you, Dr. Coffee. I'm super interested to see what you have to say. Back in July, late July, just a few weeks ago, there was a study released on coffee consumption and dementia risk. And it also had to do with your brain size. I was fascinated to see this because there's so many bodies of research showing the reduction in dementia risk from coffee consumption. But at this study, which was a pretty big study, let's see, not absolutely huge, 17,700 participants between ages 37 and 73, and they drank more than 6 cups of coffee a day and had an increased risk of dementia and supposedly a smaller sized brain, a shrunken brain. What do you think of this study?
So when you bring up a study, first of all, I'll give you what's called the story at a glance. And at a glance, you see that they looked at 17,000 people between 37 and 73, and that they found that the participants consumed more than 6 cups a day, and that they had more than 400 milligrams of caffeine a day, and that there was a 53% increased risk of dementia and smaller total brain volume. So that's the at a glance. What you can't get from the at a glance is comorbidities. Did they have other problems, other health factors? How many out of the group were diabetic? When they talked about 6 cups of coffee a day, are they talking about 6 mocha lattes with 12 teaspoons of sugar in each?
Right.
What are they talking about when they're talking about? So it's not a really good study. What they probably did in this study, and I haven't been able to find it, I know it's out of the University of South Australia, but all I've been able to find is the story at a glance. So what they don't talk about, I'm sure it's a retrospective study, which means that they took 17,000 people who had dementia between age 37 and 73 and looked at coffee consumption. I don't really understand how they did this study. It doesn't really tell me in the at a glance.
Oh, fascinating. I didn't think about it like that retrospectively.
Yeah, so I'm really not understanding it. I'll try and give you a deeper dive the next time we get together in it. But there probably is some truth to the fact that if you drink more than 6 cups of caffeinated coffee a day, you do put your brain at risk for too much caffeine.
Sure. And that's what I see is 3 to 6 cups. That seems to be, 3 to 5 cups I see recommended, and I've seen 3 to 6 cups recommended. So this study that specifically says more than 6 cups of coffee daily, I wondered if there was a little bit of a drawback there, a diminishing return.
Yeah, so I go by the Food and Drug Administration guidance, which says 4 to 5 cups a day, which is about 400 milligrams of caffeine, is what you should limit yourself to. I'm fine with that. You have to make sure you're drinking a good quality coffee. If you're drinking a crap coffee 5 cups a day, then you're adding sugar and milk to it, you're getting a fair amount of negative products.
Yeah, there's a lot of detriment there. If you're, like you said, if you're consuming pesticides, and now you're going to do a study on dementia, we know that a lot of those pesticides are neurotoxins. So again, is this pesticide-free, mold-free, regeneratively farmed coffee? Almost certainly not, because most coffee isn't. But again, I don't want to pedal back on what could be a real. The one thing that makes me question it is, and this is so kind of small-brained and small sample size, because we understand like biphasic effects, right? Like you take a certain thing and it's a benefit to a disease or some sort of condition, and then you take too much of it and it does the opposite, right? We're all familiar with that. But there are a lot of examples through history of people consuming massive amounts of coffee. Some of the greatest thinkers of our time. So were they just exempt from this? Maybe. Or maybe there's more to it than just the traditional biphasic effect. You know who I'm talking about, the Voltaires who drank 60 cups a day, and the Beethovens and all these people. Hey, maybe they had a shrunken brain. I don't know. Maybe it was just lightweight and compact. But it does make me wonder, those extreme cases, right?
Right.
Never know. We will follow up. Again, this will be another one that we'll double back on.
Yep.
Let's see. What do we got here? We got time for 2 more quick articles here. This one's tough. This is a tough article. And I think we saw an article about this, or maybe it was warning about this not too long ago. We're going to Hawaii, and bad news for coffee farmers on Hawaii. They specifically try to protect those small island communities from anything invasive. You're not supposed to visit a farm and then fly to Hawaii because you might be tracking something on your shoe.
Right.
And this is what they worry about. And it's kind of been the worst case scenario has come true now for coffee growers, because the first case of coffee leaf rust occurred in Maui. And we all know, I've done an entire episode on how bad coffee leaf rust is. And now it's made its way to the island. Wasn't there before, not native. And then somehow someone had a spore, got stuck on someone's beard or something. And now it's on the islands. I'm hoping that this doesn't affect the coffee industry in Hawaii too badly, right, Dr. Coffee?
I hope it doesn't, but this is really a big deal because the coffee leaf rust is a fungus. It's a spore. It will decimate coffee growing in Kona, in Kauai.
Oh, because of the humidity. It's perfect for that. Oh no.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. You're right. It is a fungal pest, and you're right. It theoretically you'd think it would spread like wildfire down there.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really a big deal, especially, as I said again, with climate change, because as the weather, the temperature in Hawaii heats up. Let's say it goes up by 2 degrees. That causes more evaporation of the water, which causes more of a climate in which fungus takes hold in even more. And you now have this leaf rust, which is devastating for coffee plants, as you've described in previous podcasts. And they're in trouble. They're going to be in a world of hurt in Kauai.
This is rough. Yeah, they don't. I'm reading an article here from thegardenisland.com titled "Farmers Tackle New Threat to Island Coffee Trees," and they're talking to a farmer. They say they don't want to spray systemic fungicides, because that was something they never did in the past. It's something they never had to do for this particular problem. And Fit is the name of the farmer, and Fit estimates that 3 to 5% of his coffee trees are already showing minor signs of rust. And it hasn't made it to the Kauai coffee yet, but it's on Maui, and there's no stopping it at that point. If you're seeing it on the farms, it's probably out of hand.
Right.
Oh, wow. So production's going to go down, and cost is probably going to go up. It's really tough for the Hawaiian farmers, man.
It really is. It's like I said, this is devastating. It's really a big deal. You know, I talked about microclimates. The reason that Hawaii has Kona is because of the volcanic ash and the microclimate that's in Hawaii.
Yeah.
At these places where you just can't grow coffee on the beach. So you have these microclimates, and now it's got this spore that's going to devastate the production. So unfortunately, I think they're going to start having to spray antifungals, and that changes the way we're going to have to process the beans to try and remove whatever pesticides we can.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. And, you know, we've had some regenerative agriculture specialists come on this show, who you would just love. Some of these people, Dr. Coffee, and they have all these tips, and they have biological fungicides, which are, you know, enzymes or, you know, different fungus and different microbes that'll go and attack what you don't want. And they spray their plants with compost tea to try to occupy the leaf surface, occupy the phyllosphere, so that no pathogens can take hold. But most people aren't on that protocol. Most of the time, the cheapest, most widely available option is a chemical option, a synthetic option, usually a harmful option. And God, you just hope that they're going to be able to make it through this, and it doesn't just devastate the region.
Yeah, you know, you're mentioning about growing food a lot on this broadcast, so I wanted to give a little heads up to all your listeners. Jordan and I are working on a book which will be finished next week. It's a small book on growing your own food. That's and right. Keep your ear to the podcast. I will be announcing in the next week or 2 or 3 that we are done with this and we're ready to send it out to anybody that wants to start doing at-home growing.
Absolutely. I'm glad that we got to collab on that project. It's a really cool one and something that I'm really passionate about, man. So thank you. And yes, stay tuned. Stay tuned, listeners. A lot of teasers in this episode. That's good. That's good podcasting. That's good production. Okay, final one here. This is just really quick, kind of an update on an older story. We talk about the coffee waste shoe companies. There's a couple of them now. You take the coffee waste, there's so much of it, and apparently it translates well to shoe material. Well, there's a brand new one. It's a Finnish firm called Wrens, and they're using coffee to make performance sneakers. So now it's not just not just your loafers. People are going to be going for a run. They're stepping up to fight Nike, and they're making they're using recycled coffee grounds to make this over in Finland. Really cool.
Yeah, they're pulling plastic out of the water, and they're recycling plastic and recycling coffee beans. And I think I know of 3 companies now that are making shoes out of coffee beans in one form or another. So it's cool. Super cool.
It's called the Nomad. That's what the brand of shoe is going to be called. So keep an eye out for the Wrens Nomad. See if it smells like coffee when it comes. Didn't you say one of them smelled like coffee when it came? I saw that review.
It did.
That's crazy.
It did.
That's hilarious. Very, very interesting stuff. Okay, that wraps up our articles, Dr. Coffee. Perfect.
Well, this was fun. Let's do it again sometime.
We shall. We absolutely shall. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you. As always, we'll be back at you with more Coffee Health and Science podcast, more coffee news, and all that fun stuff. This is Jordan River and Dr. Coffee signing off for now, saying have an extraordinary day. We'll see you next time on the Coffee, Health, and Science podcast.